Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made for this month's A Punched Out Thursday to Die For. Last month I took the month off from all of my regular hops. I just needed a little bit of a break. I guess I overdid it on scrapbooking and I had zero ideas and no mojo, so I thought I would use that month to catch up on some videos and some cleaning up of my scrapbooking area, and I'm really glad that I did that, and now I'm super psyched to be creating for A Punched Out Thursday to Die For again. For this month's layout, I found that I had a whole bunch of hexagons that I'd already cut out for another project, and I ended up going with a totally different idea for that project, but I still had the hexagons, and I decided I would use them for this layout. I wanted to combine the idea of using these larger hexagons with some fussy cut flowers that I found in a plastic bag in one of my drawers. I believe they're from a Kaisercraft paper, I'm not 100% sure, but I remember fussy cutting all of them out, intending to use them, and then I forgot about them. So I'm going to combine the flowers and some pattern papers that I had in my stash, and I'm also including a couple of smaller hexagons because, again, I already had the hexagons punched out and I thought that I could make all of this work together. The flowers that I'm going to use, which you'll see in a few moments, they are peach, and then the leaves on the flowers are a grayish color. There are also some tiny blue flowers. So I looked on Pinterest and I searched for coral, slate blue, gray color scheme, and I found a color scheme that I liked. It had the three colors that I mentioned. It also had navy blue, light blue, and a kind of a dark yellow color, like a yellow ochre color. And I remembered that I had a paper pad that had a lot of those same colors in it. It's a die cuts with a view pad called Preserved Paper. And then I also added in one more pattern paper. It was a really old pink Paislee paper. That is the blue and the yellowish pattern that you see on the mat right now. Then I used the same die and I cut out all of those pattern papers, and then I used those white cardstock hexagons and I layered them on top of each other. I used 3 white hexagons for each pattern paper hexagon. I used my ATG gun. I attached all of the layers together with, of course, the pattern paper on the top, and then I used some Distress ink in Vintage Photo and I inked all the edges. I also used the Distress Oxide to ink the edges of all of the larger and smaller fussy cut flowers. There was also a tag in with those fussy cut items, so I decided I would just go ahead and ink that up too, although I don't end up using the tag on the layout. The background pattern paper is a Paper Studio pattern paper, and I like the way it had a blue cast to it. The only problem with this paper is that it's extremely flimsy, and there's a lot of weight from all of the hexagons on it, so I probably should at one point go in and reinforce it by adding another piece of pattern paper behind it. I was going to arrange the hexagons just in a simple straight line going across the layout, but then I was thinking that I liked the way that one hexagon looked a little bit lower than the others. I wasn't sure about it at first, so I tried to just put the hexagons going straight across the page, and then I decided to just go ahead with that one hexagon lower than the rest, and then I positioned those smaller hexagons in 3 different places on the layout. I'm using ATG adhesive again, and I'm attaching those hexagons down to the page. There are 3 hexagons that have the blue and yellow pattern, and I accidentally placed one of them at a different angle than the rest. Right now 2 are at a different angle, but I end up straightening out the one that's on the right-hand side, but the one on the left, I cut it short in a few moments when I trim the edge of the hexagons that are hanging over the edge of the page. And so it looks different from the other 2, and it was already cut, so I had to just accept it, although those are things that I try to be careful about. But this one got away from me, and I decided not to recut it. And I actually didn't even notice that until today, and all my supplies are away now. If they were still out, I probably would have switched out that one hexagon. I have to leave the center open because I don't have a shape to go in that spot, but that's fine. My photo will rest on all of the shapes that are surrounding that open area. I'm playing around with those small hexagons a little bit. I wanted one of them to be higher than the other. I didn't want both of them to be on the same horizontal line, so I made the one on the left a little bit higher than the one on the right. I couldn't use my T-square until I had trimmed the excess hexagons off of each of the edges, but now that I have those cut to size, I'm using my T-square and just making sure that all of the hexagons are straight on the page. I wanted to put a little something behind the photo, so I picked this paper. This is from that Die Cuts with a View pad, and I'm using my scissors. I know you're not really supposed to use your scissors to rough out the edges of things, but I find them so handy. They're always right there, and I have to really dig for my distress tool. But I didn't use my good detail scissors that you could see on the table right now. I used some inexpensive scissors. I also could have used the back of the scissors, so I really shouldn't make excuses, and I really shouldn't be using the blade of my scissors to distress things, especially when there are so many other options. But in any case, I lightly distress the edge of that piece of paper. I love the way it has gold foiling. That's the same paper I used on the hexagons. Then I attached the photo down to the mat, added some adhesive, put it in place, and then I just double checked to make sure that it's straight on the layout. Now I'm going to start adding the flowers to the layout. I really like these flowers. I think that I procrastinated using them once I fussy cut them out because I didn't have any other papers from the same paper collection. And I probably shouldn't have just shoved them in a plastic bag in a drawer because a few of them got a little damaged, but not enough to really show on the layout, but you will see a little bit of that in the close-ups. I wanted to have a mixture of flowers on the hexagons and also on the background. I was thinking as I was doing this that I didn't really have a good place in mind for my title. So I looked through a box of titles that I have and I found some stickers from Paper House. They're off to the left. There are some fairly small titles. I found this one that says Enjoy, and I decided that since I didn't really have a great place for it anywhere else, that I could put it right on the photo. There's kind of a dark area in the lower right-hand corner. It's not covering anything up, and I think that that's probably the best place for a title. The Die Cuts with a View paper pad had a cut-apart sheet, and I cut out one butterfly from that and then two other matching butterflies from some other places in the pad, so I had 3 of the same butterflies. As I said, I fussy cut those out, and then I inked the edges with the Distress ink in Vintage Photo again, and then I'm going to place one of them on each of those small hexagons that are already on the layout. And then I was happy with where everything was, and I began attaching everything down. I didn't pop up any of the flowers on any foam just because it was already a good amount of dimension with the thickness of the hexagons. So I just attached them either down to the background paper or on top of the hexagons. And I forgot to mention that I found a scrap of paper that had a little bird on it, and I decided to just cut out that little piece of the bird and tuck it among the flowers in the upper right-hand corner of the layout. So now I'm adding just a tiny little bit of foam to each of the wings of the butterflies. I didn't add any to the flowers, but I just had to add foam to the butterflies. It's one of my favorite things to do on layouts, and it's only a very small amount of dimension, but I love the way it makes the butterflies look like they're in flight. I put a small rectangle of foam on each of the butterfly's wings. I put some adhesive down the center of the butterfly and also on the foam. And then when I press down on the center of the butterfly, the wings seem to pop up a little bit, and I just love that effect. I do it all the time on my pages. Now I'm adding some tiny blue flowers to the layout. I fussy cut these from the same sheet of paper that I fussy cut the roses from, and I thought that it was nice to have some flowers of different scales on the page. I'm spreading those small flowers around the page. Some of them are singles, some of them are in clusters, and I was thinking that they looked better when they were slightly tucked behind the larger flowers. So in most cases, I tried to do that, make them still visible, but have them visually connected to the larger flowers. Sometimes I feel that if there are too many elements scattered all over the page looks a little messy and it's kind of hard to focus on anything. Of course, every layout is different and it depends on how that's done, but that was why I think that I wanted to connect all of the flowers and have them look like one unit. When I first started adding these blue flowers to the page, I was thinking, oh, I have so many of them. But I was very surprised that by the end, I had used up almost all of them. And I probably could have used a few more. I often add some die cut branches to the flower clusters at this point of creating a layout. I decided though for this layout I just wanted to stick with these small blue flowers and give this layout a little bit of a different look. So now that I have all those little flowers in place, I use some ATG adhesive and I attach them down. And once they were all attached down, I added a couple more. I added a blue flower attached to the leaf underneath the photo, and then I had two of those smaller hexagons that didn't have any blue flowers on them, and I liked the way the one at the bottom looked with the blue flower on it, so I decided that I would add some blue flowers to the other hexagons as well. Those tiny flowers had a white center, so I thought that in order to add a little bit of dimension and another texture to the layout, I would use some very, very tiny pearls and place those in the center of all of the small flowers. I'm using some self-adhesive pearls that I got on clearance from the wedding section of Hobby Lobby. I love these very, very tiny pearls, but they only had a couple of them on each sheet, so I had to use 2 packs of these tiny pearls in order to have enough to go in the centers of all of the flowers on the layout. In the beginning, I was trying to put those really small pearls on with just my fingers, and then when I was stumbling with trying to get those in the right spots on the page, I decided to use some scissors, and that worked out much better. It was much better to place them with the scissors. I love to add pearls to the centers of the butterflies, so I used the medium-sized pearl and I added 3 of those to each of the 3 butterflies on the page. Next, I was thinking that I wanted to add some photo corners to my photo, so I used my EK Success scalloped photo corner punch and the dark blue color that I used on the hexagons in the background, and then I inked the edges once again with the Distress ink, and now I'm attaching those down to the photo using some ATG adhesive. I don't use any wet adhesive on this page, but even when I do use wet adhesive, I don't like to use it on my photo because I always end up getting it on my photo. I tried these 2 tags out on the page. One was in with the flowers, the other one I cut out of the paper pad, but I decided they didn't really add anything to the page, so I decided to leave those off. And then I was thinking that I just had to add the finishing touch of adding a pearl to the photo corners, so I used the largest pearl for that. And then I tucked a butterfly right underneath the title on the right hand side. I didn't embellish it in any way, but I thought that it looked nice to have an embellishment next to the title, and I popped up the wing on the right so that it would sit correctly on the page, and that was the last touch, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video, everybody. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I'm very excited to be back doing a Punched Out Thursday to die for. Please don't forget to check out the videos of Kathy, Ronnie Sue, and Sonia. The links to their channels will be in the description box, and they have lots of great videos on their channel. I recommend that you check them out. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.